Hello and welcome to the Adventures of LBZ. I am Lance Collins, and if you are new to this channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Also, if you like this video, consider hitting the like button. In this video, I will be rebuilding a Trx450fm carburetor. I believe this one was a 2004 maybe? Yeah, I think it was a 2004 that I was working on. This kit for this is actually anywhere from 98 to 2004. All right, so the first thing I'm doing is I've actually taken the carb completely apart, because most people are probably going to be trying to figure out how to assemble this back together. So what I'm doing is I actually have already cleaned it, and what I'm doing is putting some Scotch-Brite down into where the float needle sits, and I'm just going to turn it a couple times, not a whole bunch, because you don't want to take any material out. I'm just cleaning any kind of gunk that was left in there after it got out of the carb tank, and then I'll just polish up the edge right there with a little bit of it, and then spray some cleaner back through the hole where the needle sits so that it cleans any kind of debris out. And I'm using the Honda brake clean, contact clean. And if you're new to any of these videos that I do, I don't play the background audio because of privacy reasons at work. I want to be able to continue doing these videos for you guys. So yeah, we'll just play a little bit of background music and do a voiceover. So I just took some air and blew it back through the hole where I just put the cleaner through. Also, I'm just going to blow through any holes that are on the carburetor there to make sure there wasn't anything left in there from whenever it was in the tank, and it's nice and dry and ready for assembly. And it's important whenever you start to work on a carburetor that you have a good screwdriver that's preferably like a number 2, and it has a really good tip on it that hasn't already been maimed up and stuff, because these bolts that go in the carburetor are really soft. And so what I'm holding up there, that is a Moose plunger kit for the side of the, it's basically a primer for the carb bowl. The one that was in this one was actually dry rotted. I'll put the part number up. Actually, I think I showed it there in the beginning before I just did that. You can pause it and get it off that. Also, in the beginning of the video, I have some still pictures of all the parts that I'm putting in it there. So, you know, the part numbers are on there if you have this same carburetor. So what I did is I put the spring in, and then now I'm positioning the plunger diaphragm into the correct spot, and then using the two small Phillips screws that came with the pump set for the bowl. And as you can see, I'm kind of going back and forth on tightening these down. That way you don't over torque one side and you know, crack the aluminum on that little pump outer piece. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to put the vacuum slide into the carburetor body. It has a little tab and there's a little cutout in the carburetor. You can see they both line up and go together. I did not use the needle out of the All Balls kit. I just never really have any good luck with those needles on there. So I just used the factory one. I cleaned it up and then I put it back into the vacuum diaphragm, and now I'll put the cap back on. It also has a little tab on it. You can see that lines up with the cutout on the back side of the carb there. And I'll go ahead and put the new bolts into the top part there, holding it down. And sometimes you have like a little tab or a little hook that will hold the vacuum lines up, and you just want to make sure you get that back where it's supposed to go. Sometimes it'll leave a little mark on the actual top plate for the diaphragm. Or you can take a little pick or something and scribe a spot where it was to help you out when you're taking it apart. But yeah, that's what I had did there, is I had actually scratched a little spot in, and now I am putting that tab and screw into its place. And once you get that cap back on, you want to make sure you go ahead and tighten all the bolts down evenly. And with that too, you want to make sure you pull everything down so that it doesn't put anything at a bind or pinch the diaphragm and cause it to leak. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is test the diaphragm, and you can do this whenever you put it in the carburetor. You can take a little bit of air, don't blow it extremely fast, but as you can see, if you blow it in that port right there, if the diaphragm is working properly, you'll see it go up and down as you pulse the air, as I just did there. So that ensures that you don't have anything pinched or anything in there before you get it all back on the machine. Now I'm going to put the main jet holder, emulsion tube, whatever you want to call it, back in there. It is a 7mm wrench is what tightens that down. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. Make sure that there's actually a little piece that's in the carburetor. It's a brass nipple that sticks up in there. You want to make sure that that is still in your carburetor. You can remove it when you're cleaning them. Sometimes we leave them in there. I left this one in there. This carburetor was actually pretty clean. The pilot jet was cleaned on it, and so he actually just wanted to go ahead and put all fresh jets in it. So we used the carburetor kit and put new fresh jets and the O-rings where it was needed in the carburetor. So what I just removed out of that bag was a tiny washer and a tiny O-ring, and I'm going to install, there's also another O-ring I'm going to install onto the air-fuel mixture screw. So there's kind of a bigger O-ring that you'll see in the pack. That'll go over the end of the air-fuel mixture screw. and has a little slot there, as you can see where that one went on there. And then what you'll do is you will put the you'll put the spring onto the air fuel mixture screw first. Then you will put the washer on, followed by the O-ring, and then you will install that into the air fuel mixture screw hole on the carburetor body. It's important when you're tightening down the air fuel mixture screw that you only tighten it down till it hits the bottom there. You don't want to force it down any tighter because you'll distort the end of the air fuel mixture screw, and you won't be able to get it in tune properly after you do that. So let me see where I set this one to. And for this particular one, I set it to 2.75 turns out from seated. That seems to run best in the area that I live in Virginia. Next thing I'll do is I'll take, there's a little tiny small jet that's in there. There's actually two of them. One is the main, one is this jet. If you turn it sideways, it actually goes into one of those little ports there on the side of the carb in the inside there. So just make sure that you're putting the right jet into the hole. They have, I believe, different thread sizes, so it's hard to kind of, get the wrong one in there. But yeah. Also, on all the jets, when you're tightening them up, they are brass, so you really don't want to crank too hard on them. You want to seat them down and then just give them just a little tiny bit of a snug in there. If you crank on them too hard, you'll break them off, and then you're back at round zero again, starting over this process, if you can get the threads out of the jet holders that they're in. So I'll go ahead and put the main jet into the main jet holder. Again, you'll tighten it down till it seats, and then just give it a little tiny bit snug there so it doesn't fall out. And now to put the pilot jet in, you'll screw that down until it's snug, and then just give it a little tiny bit of a twist there. You don't want to tighten it down too tight, just like the other ones. Actually, that was the plug that goes into the end of that, where that little small jet goes on the side. But I will be putting the pilot jet in here in a second. That is the rubber plug that I'm installing though now. It can kind of be a pain in the butt to get in there. You just want to make sure you got it in there. It's not going to stay in there, well, it'll stay in there if you push it up in there, but if you go playing with it, it falls out easy. But once you put it in the carb and the carb's on the machine, then it usually stays in there. And that's the pilot that I just dropped in there beside of it. And now to put the float valve and float back into the carburetor, you'll slide it into the actual float, and then you'll slide that down into where the seat is for it. And I already had the pin slid up in there. Yeah, I have a little itty bitty hammer. It's because somebody put the pin in the wrong side and it won't come out. And so I had to drive it back in. That's actually why that pin was still in there. Somebody had already rebuilt it before and there's actually grooves on one side of that, and it was in the wrong way. So yeah, whatever, it still works. The float operates how it's supposed to operate. That float is in particular is not adjustable. I'm not going to check that float with like a gauge because what I'll do at the end, I don't know if I'll show it, but because I think somebody walked in the frame when I was doing it. But I have a little tiny fuel tank beside me that I hook it up to, and then just make sure that the no fuel comes out the overflows or anything on the carburetor, and that ensures that the float is closed off. I just put the O-ring onto the float bowl, and now I'm going to put the float bowl on there. On some carburetors of this same series, you will actually have a little plastic circle that will go around your main jet. This particular carburetor did not have that. I don't know if it's supposed to have it in there. It ran fine. This is actually somebody I know's carburetor, so yeah, it runs fine. Everything's good to go now. They've been beating the crap out of it in the wintertime. I actually filmed this video, actually I think a month or two back. So, yep. I'm putting brand new float bowl screws into the carburetor, and I'll get all those tightened down evenly there before I really, seat them down. And a little tip, if you're having problem with that O-ring when you're putting the float bowl back on, staying in the float bowl when you're trying to assemble it to the carburetor, you can actually just take a little bit of grease and rub on it and put it back down into the spot on the carb bowl, and it won't fall out. It kind of makes it stick there. And the only thing I really didn't get to do on this carburetor was there's a screw that is on the very bottom of the float bowl, and that is a carb drain screw. And this one in particular was seized in there. And yeah, the customer, he didn't want to risk drilling it out and damaging that, because if you damage the screw or the actual threads that are in the carburetor there, you have to buy a new carburetor body. So yeah, he just opted to leave it in there, and we made sure it didn't leak before it left. I'm replacing a couple of the dry rotted lines that are for the carburetor vents now. What I'll do is I'll take the little clips that hold them on off, and I will measure some vent tube that we have in stock. I don't have a part number for that. It's just bulk vent line for carburetors. You want to make sure that it's for carburetors, because the fuel vapors and stuff will break other stuff up. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do for these two vent lines here that are cracked. I'm going to go ahead and cut two little pieces to length and get them back onto the carburetor where they're supposed to be. And just a couple other little tips here for you if you're doing this at your house. When you're cleaning the carburetor itself, if you don't have ultrasonic cleaner, what you can do is you can get some like Honda Bright cycle wash cleaner. You can put it a couple bottles into a bucket. You can take the carburetor all the way apart and soak the body, the metal pieces, in the cleaner for a couple hours, then pull it out with hot water and make sure you rinse everything completely out. Don't let it sit before you rinse it out, but rinse the carburetor out and blow air through all your orifices, and you should be good to go. But yeah, that's what I would do if I didn't have ultrasonic cleaner. I would use like a Honda Bright cleaner and just let them soak in there, and that stuff really eats the dirt up on there, and anything that's inside the carburetor, it will it'll loosen it up. And then whenever you run the cold or the hot water through the carburetor, it will actually, the rest of the stuff will just kind of flush out of it. Also, do not use carburetor cleaner. Carburetor cleaner is usually designed for like old carbs on cars and stuff. The carburetors on these, if you get any of that cleaner in anywhere, or it gets on O-rings or the diaphragm, it will swell it up or dry them out really quick and make them crack. Yeah, it's not good. So I use what I use to spray through the float valve spot there was the Honda contact cleaner. I don't trust that stuff enough to get it on any of the rubber stuff. I just use some silicone spray right there to make it easy to slide that on the nipple. That's okay. That's not going to hurt this rubber here. But yeah, if you're going to use any kind of contact cleaner, just make sure you don't hit any of the rubber on the carburetors with it, because you don't want a chance damaging anything that's rubber or swelling an O-ring up or causing an air leak because the O-ring didn't seat properly. Another thing is you don't have to pull the carburetor heater out of the carburetor whenever you're cleaning it. There's not really a any kind of ports or anything in there that need to be cleaned, and it does not hurt them to soak the carburetor with it in there. Just make sure you dry the connection out, and I like to put a little bit of the dielectric grease on the terminals whenever I go to clip it back into the machine. And that's pretty much it for this carburetor in this video. If you are new to this channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Also, if you like this video, please hit the like button. As always, thanks and have a great day.